Welcome to Immersive Marketing. Please welcome your panelists, Chris Kaliszewski, Molly Swenson, and Sam Margolis, and moderator Ann Lukowski.
Hello. That was a fun little announcement there. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Immersive Marketing. I was talking with some of my panelists earlier today, and I said that you guys are at the best panel because we are the money. Nobody's making any money in VR except for us. So, good job. We only have 50 minutes, so we're going to start with very quick introductions, and then I'm going to ask the crowd how many of you are VR and immersive media creators versus how many of you are brands, advertisers, companies, tech companies that are looking to utilize marketing. So are you a user or a maker? And then based off that, we're going to have hopefully a better, more focused conversation. So we'll start with Chris.
Hi, my name is Chris Kaliszewski, and I'm a VR producer at Tool North America. We do a variety of content there, live action, digital, and VR. I've produced several VR projects the last couple of years, ranging from Adidas, Converse, Infinity, across all spectrums of the VR landscape.
My turn. Hi, I'm Sam Margolis. I'm the executive producer at Spectacle. I've also had the opportunity to produce a number of VR experiences, as well as some projection mapping and other sort of interactive technology experiences. I've worked with, no, I haven't worked with them. I almost lied to you. I've worked with Sports Illustrated. I've worked with the band Run the Jewels. I've worked with Corona, Anheuser-Busch, and some other brands as well.
Hi, my name's Haley Pappas. I'm head of films at Riot. We are an immersive media company that produces largely purpose-driven content. We do it with news, with films, and obviously we do it with a lot of VR. As relates to marketing, we work with a range of clients from nonprofits and foundations to large corporate brands. And I'm so happy to be here today and excited to talk to you all.
Great. And then I'm Annie Lukowski, co-founder of Vanishing Point Media. We are a VR content creation company, and we've done many commercials working with Stan Lee's Kamikaze and Banana Republic and a bunch of others. Okay, great. So I prepped you. Now I'm going to ask the question. Raise of hands. How many of you are content creators? Wow. Okay. And now how many of you are distributors, marketers, advertisers? Okay, so we will actually discuss both. That's straight down the middle. Okay, so my first question is VR, well, and we are going to talk about immersive media as well, so all of you make sure that we get to that. But specifically for VR, for the VR content creators, how is it different and working in VR versus working in traditional media?
Well, I think one of the big things is distribution. I mean, we talk about VR and being the challenge of distribution. Not everyone has headsets. Being able to get the content out to as many people as possible so you get a big return on your investment, or get asses in glasses, someone said to me today, which I'm going to steal, like that one. So the different approaches you take, obviously you can create mobile apps, you can do live events, showcasing the apps to get buzz on the ground, and also having like sort of a slick case study video that sort of showcases, the technology that they're using and how you're telling your story and, engaging people with your brand.
I'd say that exactly what he said, but being able to convert that into language that a brand or an agency can understand, so they can actually fathom it and go like, oh, now I understand how I can produce this and why it's important. Because that challenge is pretty great at this point, is because of the lack of asses and glasses, you have a real challenge to get people to sort of walk through and say, what is the breadth of this immersion that I'm going to experience, and why the hell does my customer care, or why would my customer actually go and be part of this in any manner?
And then just to follow up more specifically on the creating of the product itself, I mean, are you shooting in 360? Are you shooting plates? Are you working with live events? Are you working with, how is it different, the filmmaking, the actual putting the camera down?
Well, I've done it both ways, actually, and the good news is that you can do it both ways, or actually more than both ways. There's probably 10 different ways or 40 different permutations you can apply. The challenge is that they all are missing like a major component in some facets. So it's like if you were going to go buy a car and you go to buy an Audi, and it's missing all its doors, and that's like the one camera system. And then you're going to go buy a Volvo, and it has no windshield, and you're frustrated because every single one of them lacks a certain capability set at this stage, or in the post-production, or then just to sort of take that one step further, when you talk about the app stuff that you were describing, where are you going to put that app, and who's going to make that app? When you make a film, you make a TV show, you make a commercial, there's sort of an end game where you hand that off to the media buying planning agency who then sends it off to the network. And it's like, yay, here it is, it's going to be on the Super Bowl, and we've done well. Once you wrap up that production side, there's also the whole app side. How am I going to distribute it? What platform or platforms is it going to be on? Who's going to test that? Wait, there's testing involved? Like, there's all those levels of trial and error and exploration that you have to explain to the client, and you have to oftentimes explain to your own teams because they're not aware of it either. And then, of course, there's getting it that much further and making sure that it's actually a great end game experience so the consumer is going to enjoy it and buy your product or take part in your service.
Goodness. Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I mean, I think I would venture to say that it's almost entirely different from traditional filmmaking for us. We focus largely on docu-style pieces of content, and we're a team of humanitarians and filmmakers first and foremost, so the process of making a VR film is wildly different every step of the way, right? As a director, you're no longer holding a camera and getting really intimate to your subject. Instead, you're lots of times setting down your VR rig and running away, right? And hiding behind a tree to make sure that you're not in that footage. And then moving along into post-production, one of our VR stitchers put it really beautifully the other day. He was saying that making a VR film and the process of it is almost more reminiscent of traditional film and processing a film, right? And you have to wait and see what is this beautiful image that I got, and I hope I got to see it, right? Because we don't have that functionality of really wonderful viewfinders yet most of the time, at least a lot of the work that we're doing often. And then I think from a director's perspective and how we engage with our audience, that's entirely shifted, right? How much of a director can you really be? How much can you really direct the story? And then how much do you really want to direct the story, right? I think that's one of the biggest questions. Is that what's so exciting and empowering about VR, that your audience gets to somewhat often make their own story and how and where they're looking and listening.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say was, speaking sort of a granularity based off of that, is that when you're on set and you're shooting with a client and they want to be there and they want to watch and monitor it, and they oftentimes can't,
Right.
and so they're confused and they don't understand that it may take a week before they can see really bad stitching that they're going to review and go through, and then the rough cut process is that much more complex.
Yes.
And then there's things like when you're doing 360, you go to YouTube and you have this beautiful equirectangular 54 by whatever file, and it looks gorgeous, it's been colored, and then YouTube just mashes it down into this thing that looks like its color's off, and you're confused and bewildered, and the client's looking at you like, well, this is not beautiful, what did you do?
What did I pay
And
for?
you're like,
This was 4K.
I do have to say, though, that one thing, I did a lot of advertising, traditional advertising in the 30s and 60s before I went into VR. And then when I first started doing VR ads, they didn't have pre-roll, they didn't have VR advertising for like the sake of VR advertising, something that's literally out there to tell a funny story and hawk some can of soup. And but now they are. I mean, so Banana Republic hired us to sell some pretty dresses. And so that, it was straight up storytelling. We had monitors, we had everything. And I do think that there is these immersive experiences that are so great that VR is giving us. And then there's these more traditional based where they are doing ad buys. They'll be doing ad buys in Facebook, ad buys, pre-rolls in Hulu and Netflix and all of those places that advertising is going into. So I think there is going to be a bridge between both of them in the near future. Yeah. Okay, good. Now I will ask the next question. Right. Well, so actually, Haley, why don't you talk? You have a background more in documentary work, and I think that would lend itself so well to these immersive experiences. And then Riot is actually not known for marketing. I even said, do you guys make ads?
Yeah. So
like, what is that about?
Sure, and I think that for us, as documentary filmmakers, first and foremost, I think we shy away from the word advertising, right? And so when we look at it, Yeah, we, as a business, we're broken into sort of, we create news, we create films, and then we actually operate as a creative agency where we work with a number of clients and, from the tiniest nonprofit to the largest corporation to help tell their stories and engage their audience in their stories. And for us, those stories are largely their stories of purpose or of cause, right? So what are sort of the behind the scenes individual character stories that are interesting? What is the good work that they're doing in the world? And we come from a place where how can we always be using technology and storytelling to get you closer to that subject with the hope or the intention of, from a journalistic perspective, compelling you to care a bit more, compelling you to move or act. And I think that for us, VR really just presented itself quite naturally as a form of marketing, right? So how can we allow you to step into the world of what that brand or that nonprofit is doing that otherwise you would never know, right? So I think for us, it's actualized and it's sort of taken shape in a number of interesting ways, right? With campaigns for Pencils of Promise or Bono's One organization or even PepsiCo Sustainability Foundation. Well, we're not really creating a PepsiCo ad. What we are doing is creating a beautiful short documentary in VR that follows a day in the life of a woman who has started this entrepreneurial recycling business in her neighborhood, right? And it happens to be supported by PepsiCo.
So actually, my next question for you, Chris. Since Haley was talking about the viewer has a choice, they can either look at the product or not, how do you as a filmmaker, and when you're talking to your client, say, trust me, they're going to look at this product? How do you focus? How do you change? How do you tell the story in that media?
Well, like I said, it can be a variety of methods, and whether that's a live event and it's showcasing a certain product. But if companies come to us that they want a VR experience, and it's about how we tell that story, and it's a mix. It could be live action content. It could be game engine created stuff, and it's that's what we do at Tool. We do a mix of that, and that's why VR always was natural for us because we have all the technologists and a big roster of live action directors who can pull off those sort of things. But it's about creating an immersive experience. And it's almost like we're past the point of where it's just you can't get away with just a video anymore. It's like taking it to another level, whether it's something that's more interactive. We recently did an event for Adidas that launched out in Vegas a couple weeks ago, and we used haptics for the first time, and created a cool project that we worked on with James Harden, and creating floor and wind experiences that tied in with the film, and just taking it to another level and creating the buzz around that. But it's all about showcasing the product within those films and getting as many people to see it as possible.
Yeah, and Sam, we were talking at lunch today about some of these other ways because the CPMs are not there. We don't have millions of people watching these ads, so you have to service the client in different ways and show a different type of penetration. So how do you guys do that?
Well, we look at it as more of an ecosystem, so to speak, of platforms. And the goal is, in order to keep the cost down, you try to create assets, whatever they are, volumetric capture or just a simple, green screen shoot or just something that's on set. And you try to, in that day, you try to help the brand or agency understand that by spending a little more money here at the beginning and crafting this in a variety of different ways, now I can then deploy this across a myriad of platforms, so you're going to get a huge amount of ROI. So you can do out-of-home, experiences that are AR-based. You can do point-of-sale experiences like at the mall that include a Vive. Then you can then also have a cardboard and a 360 Facebook and 360 YouTube sort of breakdown. But there's something else that I have a little bit of a geek out about like STEAM and education of children, and there's a thing that's been kind of floating around there which is called edutainment. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but I look at VR the same way. Like you can edutain your customer about your product in a way that's fun, it's exciting, it's a game, or it's an interaction, or it's just it's a passive but beautiful experience that allows you to appreciate what that product or service offers you, yet it's so fun or cool that you don't mind being sold to in the way that when you see that soap commercial during the football game, you really don't care, and you're up to get chips.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that and add to that. We like to use the phrase of oops, I learned something, right? So you love the piece of content and then you just happen to learn something along the way. And I think part of that also is meeting the customer or consumer where they are, right? So not asking them to come anywhere else, but when you meet them there, for it to not feel invasive, but for it to actually feel additive. right? So, and that again just comes down to like content and story. Is it interesting? Do you want to watch it? Do you want to keep watching it? And I think that goes for, 360 VR pieces that are, as you're scrolling through Facebook, you see them. And it also transcends to AR as well, and this idea of transforming physical spaces around you, right? What if you're walking through an aisle and a brand is actually able to make the physical space around you interactive and interesting so that your kid isn't annoyed while you're shopping in the aisles, instead they have a toy to play with, right? I think that there are ways to make advertising actually really fun and compelling and engaging.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's so important to think about our client's client. Like, who is the person who's actually watching this? What is their demographic? What is the need? What question are we answering? What problem am I solving in their life? And that's what, once you really internalize that, then you can understand what you're doing it and why you're doing it. And there's so many different conduits. Like, our largest client was a tech company based out of Virginia, and it's a lighting company, and they do incredibly complex alternating current. I mean, like, I've learned so much about power. And they paid and bought 8 separate ads from us in like a 3-month period, and about 6 people are going to watch these ads because their clients are the city of Los Angeles or the city of New York or giant real estate people. And so the cost per acquisition for them, they wanted something that their sales team had that they could go out and show on the sales calls, and that's it. So I didn't have to, they didn't need an app. They didn't want to put it up on YouTube. They're like, put it on these, go out, buy us phones, buy us headsets, teach them how to work it, and we're gonna pay you a lot of money. Yeah. So there's so many different needs. You don't have to just think, I gotta get 1 million views. How am I gonna get that? There's not 1 million, well, there's 1 million headsets out there, but I don't know how many people are actually using them. But they're coming. They are coming, though.
I would just say, though, that, and this is probably egregious for me to say here, but you don't always have to do it in VR. And you should be smart enough to realize that and take a look. If it can be shot like this,
Yes.
it's okay. That medium works really well. Or if it just needs to be a radio spot because it's for people of a certain demographic and a certain age, that's okay. And you need to be smart enough to realize that and tell your clients that. Because a lot of times people will just say, yeah, I'm going to do it, and you're going to make something that's going to be boring or horrible or suck or not get the business done.
And for the sake of VR, I think that it actually benefits all of us to be more selective about what we do tell in VR, because if we're creating not entertaining, boring, poorly made pieces of content in VR, that industry is going to be looked down upon, right? Versus if we're choosing the right medium for each story, I think we're all in a better place.
Yeah, it'll be the Clash of the Titans for anybody who knows this stereo 3D world from film. It's a weird, geeky reference.
So why don't you guys start talking a little more about some of the immersive experiences that you've been doing?
Why don't I? My team, specifically my partner Peter Martin, who kicks ass, he's been doing a lot of hologram work over the years, and recently he went over to Taipei and helped Intel launch their new 10-core processor in Taipei at the Computex conference, and he did a hologram technology, which is funny because if anybody knows Pepper's Ghost, it's a very, very old Victorian level technology, but there's some really interesting screens, I should say, that are out there now. Like this guy, Stuart Warren Hill, made this amazing hollow gauze that was used with the Eric Prydz concerts. If anybody's seen that, it's phenomenal. So there's some really fun stuff that's coming out with that now to allow it to be a little more cost effective, a little more durable, and I think you add AR, and what we're also mixing with a bit is AI, and you add a sort of an intelligence and a machine learning approach to a volumetrically captured hologram experience where the crowd, like all of you, can interact in some way and have an engagement with. And again, that's a key word that makes me kind of want to punch myself in the face, but engagement, do you have people actually... Advertisers
love the word engagement.
Yeah.
Learn to love that word.
Lots of catchphrases that you can, we said ROI like 7 times already too, so... But... it is true. Like if you guys are actually, if it, when the Q&A comes, which is one of the most important things, is we actually know what you're thinking about, and we're helping guide you. Hopefully, we're helping. That's the most important part. So if you can do that with a hologram, or you can do that with touchscreens, you look at museums and the kiosk capability sets now that some of the more forward-thinking museums have, to really advance the amount of information they can give you and do it in a beautiful way with great design. And I don't know who saw the group before, but the spatial audio stuff. When you can start deploying that. Because right now you get a right-left in your ear when you're wearing your headset. And the Atmos guys, by the way, check out the Atmos thing. It's really cool. when you can really start deploying the ability to have that differential of where sound is coming from, that level of immersion is unstoppable. It evokes emotion, it brings you back, it just allows for a better sense of awareness and presence.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot more live installations, whether it's LED or generative art or different ways to engage the brand. I traditionally done sites and platform sites, experiential sites, WebGL, things like that, and we're getting into more of these physical events, which really gives us the brands the opportunity to engage with their customers on site more and just showcase the brand in a different kind of way. And usually those things will travel from city to city and just really get the word out there more than a traditional website where people are apps aren't as big as they were, maybe some, but we see a lot more of that stuff with installations.
And do you, I mean, I certainly see these events being where the future is, where we're actually heading to. Do you think 5 years down the road, what is it going to be like in advertising for VR and IR and everything?
Prognostication questions?
Yeah. Okay, maybe 1 year down the road then.
Well, I mean, I think like anything else, it's just it's a hodgepodge right now.
Well, what are you excited about?
I'm excited about the audio stuff. I mean, I just yapped on that, so I won't bore you guys again with it. But it's really tremendous what you can do with it. And I was in a room the other day for a sound test, and they had a 9.2 system, which you don't often have around you, which also leads to the challenge. It's like, yeah, the system's really amazing, but how many people are actually going to be around for that? Which is why these sort of larger scale experiential things that are placed in large public settings are the place to do it and where the brand will do well, because you can actually set that up and afford to do that right. But they were literally changing the reflection of the reverb of different object-based oriented musical objects, I should say, all around you. So you could watch these things literally on a screen move around, and then you could hear it reflect and change at the same time. And it was mind-blowing. It just felt good. Like, you could just sit back and relax. And if you can equate that with a brand story, or something that's emotionally tying, like what you guys are working on.
Yeah, I think we're really excited about these sort of place-based activations, and so for us, AR has obviously lends itself so much to that. We've been doing a lot of AR lately, and some of it almost just proof of concept, and there's a learning curve, right, to introduce your potential clients or advertisers to this medium and prove the power of it. So we did this really wonderful AR where we stripped a warehouse and we filled it with empty frames, picture frames, and we brought a bus of school kids into there, and we had them close their eyes and then open their eyes, and we told them they were going to the Louvre, and they were like, "What? This does not look like the Louvre. What are you talking about?" And then we pulled up iPads, and all of a sudden, before their eyes, these empty frames are able to, with AR, be full of all of the most famous artwork in the world, and so there's this notion of sort of like wonder and excitement that AR can bring us, and I think that there was a bit of, for us, that became a really powerful tool to use with brands and with clients and with foundations to show them, look at ways that we can transform the physical spaces around us. We did the same with bathroom signs in North Carolina around this notion of policing bathrooms and where can a transgender individual go to the bathroom. And so we did a similar activation and stunt where we had a bunch of people hold up their phones, and with AR the sign morphs from male or female into this unisex all-inclusive space. And so I think for us, the rogue activist in us loves that capability, and to be able to invite brands to participate in those stories with us feels really exciting.
I mean, that's one thing I say, even when you're making narrative VR films. I mean, you can't cook while wearing a headset. You can't pay your bills.
Not yet.
Not yet. So you have a dedicated viewer. You have a dedicated consumer. And that's really nice for the advertiser and the brands and the companies to hear about. Like, those 1,000 views are 1,000 views. Like, nobody's doing their hair during it.
I love demoing VR. I don't know, I've done thousands of these demos out in places, and I just love the reaction, regardless of age, or whether someone works in tech or someone doesn't. But I love when people take the headset off. 9 out of 10 times, people are still blown away. Like, we work in the industry, we're very picky with it. We push pixels and we see things. But the general public who have never tried VR just absolutely love it so much. And there's 1 out of 10 who are like, it's pixely, it's blurry, I don't get it. But for the most part, it's like that's what's so encouraging is for people and brands and working in this business.
Well, I'd say, speaking to both those, is that there's a sense of discovery that comes with it. If you look at the traditional 30-second spot, even if, the amazing, the Super Bowl one, I keep referencing football today, but the Super Bowl one where there's this dachshund's running, which is just adorable. It's fun, it's cute, but if you're inside that and you have a bunch of dachshunds running at you, it would be fantastic. And all of these things give you, all these different immersive technologies, whatever, whether it's the activations he was discussing or what you were discussing, is that it's discovery and it's fun, and it really involves people. I guess immersion involved is sort of the same thing, but even without all the fun haptics that you can apply, which is another thing that I think is amazing, is as you look at like Subpack, or there's this thing called the Baselet, which I don't know if anybody's seen, which hasn't come out yet, which is fantastic. These guys made this it's a little watch, and you plug your iPhone or iPhone in, and then you listen to a song while you're walking down the street, and it hits perfectly the bass for it. So and you're like, oh, it just sounds kind of like whatever, big deal. But as soon as you take it off, you realize how much you don't feel that when you're walking down the street with it. It's really subtle. It's perfectly timed. They have this whole patent pending technology. It's coming out of Germany. And it's like those little things so far that are just coming out before we start getting to like haptic suits and some weird porn stuff and everything else that'll kind of come with it.
Haley, you look like you had something to say.
Yes, I was just going to say on that. On the notion of discovery, I think that's what becomes really important to the brand, right? Is being affiliated and associated with a consumer's first moment of discovery, that first time experiencing VR, that first time experiencing AR, and I think there's such value in that oftentimes, it's less about, for the brand or for the client, it's less about sort of what is that actual story as much as it is what's their reaction after, and they're always going to remember, the brand logo on that headset or the brand logo on the back of the phone that allowed you to see that AR. Those tiny things start to have value.
Well, it makes I don't know if anybody's from New York, but there was the Samsung experience years ago. It still exists today, and it's pretty wild, the stuff they're doing now with 4D chairs and virtual reality. But they had these spinning, just spun on an axis, and it was just sort of this Pratt design team who did it. It was really cool, but it was just like, it wasn't really an experience. You walked in, and it looked beautiful for a second, and then you're like, all right, what now? And you couldn't buy anything in the store either, which was even weirder. It was just like you went in, you saw stuff, and you walked out kind of confused. And
Sounds like early Tesla.
so now, well, actually, that's an interesting question to talk about, is the acquisition of that product or service via VR. At this stage, there's not much in the way of, I can engage with somebody on a certain level, tell an awesome story, have them interact with things, but can I actually buy something directly from that yet? Look at Refinery 29's model, where like they show that blouse, then you can buy it right then and there, and that's really smart and simple. Yep. VR hasn't deployed that, as far as I know of, yet. There may be some examples of it coming out, and there's some really interesting metrics and data analytics that companies are offering now, or just starting to offer, but I don't think you can buy anything yet within the spaces too much. Even with Vive, you have to go to Steam at this point.
Not that I know of, but I personally, as a storyteller, I feel really grateful for that, because I don't know if the mainstream is at a place yet where that wouldn't deter them. Right? I feel like we still have a bit more convincing to do. We still, there are only 1 million headsets out there, right? We still have to really get these people.
Active headsets. So
yeah.
I know. I'm sure the New York Times mailed out more than that.
Sure. But I just feel like I appreciate that we still have a little bit of a window to continue creating great content so that they love the medium even more.
Yeah, I say that, but just for counterpoint would be the brands want to sell their product, and if they're going to underwrite it, they want channels with which to get that product into the hands of their consumers. So we probably should be figuring that out.
Great. Well, I'm going to open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions? I think there's somebody going to be running around with a mic. Yeah.
Thanks for mentioning AR. I was just going to ask what platform you've been experimenting with for AR, since there are no standards. What have you played with?
Sure. So we at Riot have really mostly been building and experimenting on our own proprietary apps. So as I said, most of these are a little bit more proof of concept, sort of, some high level sort of ideas to start shopping around. And we're not in a place yet where we're really distributing on a mass level. But I think there has yet to be that real player that's put their stake in the ground.
We've been experimenting with HoloLens. Sorry.
Yeah, you
did. just to continue to push that. I don't think we're quite there with brands who are they're not really reaching out for us for AR stuff as much yet. Technology is still being shaped and figured out. And I think those of you who've tried the HoloLens before, it's a beautiful headset, but when you've tried VR and the field of view is just so much different. So it's getting there, but we're continuing to push those boundaries too.
But there are a couple technologies out there. There's Erasma, there's Blipar, and both of those allow for. They're pretty much out of the box ability for you to go and create something, and depending on your technological capabilities or partners that they can give you, or they can do it themselves, they can help you with that. So there are companies that are doing. That's basically the Pokemon Go model, where you just take your phone, which is great because we all know how important the phone is to our world. It's basically our opiate, and so.
So I just remembered one other question, so I'm going to ask another question. We haven't really talked about social that much. We were recently approached to, they wanted a very heavy social component with the VR. They wanted to have a contest, they wanted to have people sharing, they wanted to have people pinning, subclipping, and how to engage a community and then foster and hold on to that community around content. Has any of you guys done anything in that area?
We've been asked a bit about that. Actually, I'm Johnny Ross to plug VRLA. Did anybody check out the new, is it Open Mind? Mind Open? Mind Show. Like, it seems to be that, thank you. That seems to be pretty interesting in that space where it allows you to create and then be able to pass through all of your different social channels, as well as, to some degree, you can, with the Vive in Tilt Brush, allows you to do that. So there are people exploring that capability set, and it's obviously imperative to include the social ecosystem within that.
Yeah. So for instance, we are going to be shooting something, and then we'll be putting a heat map on the video, and then based off of what people look at, they will be scored on the little contest that goes with it, and then based off of their scores, that's something that they can share and then win points to get other stuff that the brand is going to be coming out with, which is we're really, really excited about.
Yeah, there's actually a company out of Austin called Thrillbox that's doing some amazing work in that way too, in gaze-based, so they can pinpoint to the pixel and the time with which you're looking. So when you're laying in product and you want to know, is anybody actually looking at my beer bottle in this commercial, or are they just staring at the horses running down the street the whole time? They'll be able to tell you that and then lay it out and then tie it in with some of their data visualization partners, so it's actually palpable for the average business person versus the quant people who have a different mindset and capability.
Yeah, we've experimented with gamifying VR experiences to track leaderboards, and we do a lot of automotive, both in the live action and VR side. So automotive is very interested in the VR space. So we're using game engines to create a more gamified tracking way of people sharing socially and competing socially and just getting the word out about a particular product.
Which also reminds me about, I don't know if anybody's read, Unity has an interesting white paper supporting Unity ads, so I will be transparent in what they're doing, but it's pretty neat about how doing certain type of ad types when they're in their gaming community has really been supportive, and they're pushing that now towards the VR space. I think it's pretty early in that exploration, but they're seeing some positive results, I think, from it.
Okay, next question.
In terms of converting from curiosity with your clients to going over the line, what are some of the gotchas that you've helped bring them across the line? What are the things that you've done to really make that happen?
You mean as far as like going from pitching to the client to actually having them green light and give you a check?
Yeah, that's a great question. We collaborate with brands and partners, with agencies when we're creating these VR experiences, and really until they see it in the VR space, is when they really know. And then we originally concept with them and we come up with the craziest ideas, things that you push the technology to as far as you can, but actually seeing it executed is where they're really just blown away. And a lot of the projects that we've done, personally, pretty much every VR project that I've produced the last 2 years has been that company, that agency or brand's first VR experience. So a lot of us come through, the live action side, and there's a very specific way of workflow of getting to that. It hasn't changed in like 100 years. And digital production, pretty much been the same for about 10 years. But it's a whole new landscape when it comes to VR workflow. Like you can't just get away with flat comps anymore. It's about seeing everything in the space, almost doing a proof of concept immediately. You can't just get away with the regular design phase. So it's a completely new process for companies.
Hi there, my name's Damien Collier. I've been working with major global brands and agencies for my whole career, and about 12 months ago we started to get a lot of interest and inquiries about 360 videos. So I founded a new venture called Blend Media, and we've built a platform to connect 360 creators with brands and agencies, both to help creators license their existing 360 content to brands and agencies, and also to receive commissions. And my question was specifically around ROI, which Sam, you were joking about before. How are you demonstrating ROI to brands who may be skeptical? And I had another question, which is, are you seeing more 360 inquiries or more VR inquiries, and is there an overlap between the two?
I guess I'll go. Well, for our piece for the Run the Jewels, which is a little different because it's a music video, so it's helping to market a brand and a record. That was we launched on the New York Times app. So unfortunately, I can't get any data out of the New York Times. Anybody wants to find a way to do that, I would love to, because I have no idea. But
500 to a
they've
million.
siloed it. They will not let me anywhere near it. But what we use it was a case study, is the amount of press that we were able to generate off of it. So I think it depends on what the end game is. And that it was about PR and PR side marketing, not as in buying the record as much, although that obviously helps a great deal. And so we were able to get a huge amount of press from Mashable and Engadget and a bunch of other publications and influencers speaking about it. And as well as like Sonar in Spain picked it up, and Toronto International Film Festival picked it up. So in that capacity, we were able to get that. I think when it comes to the product stuff, again, without having the direct ability to purchase something, it's just about eyeballs. And so, as I said, I'm exploring things with like Thrillbox and some other technologies to get better data, but there hasn't been much available for us to offer. The brands have had to do a little bit of a leap of faith in that capacity, but you can get with
just to piggyback off what he's saying, I think no is the answer. There's not enough viewers out there. Like, you can't get an ROI to these people. So right now, there's so many other. We're at the very, very beginning phase, and where it's a promise, and you're gonna get press. So even if nobody watches the Nike ad, they're gonna get a lot of press about how Nike's doing something really cool, and maybe I'll check out those shoes. So I do think the tide is shifting. I've been in this space for 2 years now, doing solely VR for 2 years, and it was, like, you'd be really happy 2 years ago if you got 500 views. Yeah. Now, we like to get 1 million views on our ads. So that's pretty good for the time frame. So I'd say just wait a little bit, but it's coming. The wave is definitely coming.
I would just add, it's a bit of a unique scenario, but we work with nonprofits a lot, right? So we often use VR as a fundraising tool, or the nonprofits do. That's their end goal, and they've had. It's a really concrete ROI that they're able to see when they're using that headset in the room at an event, at a fundraiser, and they see that the amount that they're able to raise that night is significantly higher than it was the year before with, a 3-minute sort of teaser that they showed the room, right? Same goes for working with the ACLU and signing petitions. We see this sort of conversion rate where, every single person takes off the headset and feels compelled to sign that petition right then and there, at numbers and percentages significantly higher than we'd see online. And some of that, I think, is a testament, again, to you have people's pure focus. You're not texting,
That's actually really wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody in a yellow shirt is going to be passing out the mics.
Hey, so I just wanted to mention, I think your portfolio is so interesting, Haley, with such creative campaigns. And Annie, I'd love to tap into your knowledge bank of paid media and VR. I don't know how you're so far ahead. We're still scrambling with that. But Sam, I wanted to ask you about any best practices you had in retail installations with VR right now, because it's so new right now, and just struggling with
one, keep it short, because you want to be able to get as many people as possible in. Have people, we can get really tangible. We'll talk maybe afterwards about that, so I don't bore you guys with very, very specific logistics. But I would say that there was this really cool thing that was done, not by me, but some partners that we've worked with out of France, Night Shift Post. they did this thing with, and I never pronounced his name right, but he directed Drive, last name Riffin. He did this thing, and what they did was, it was in-store for Hennessy at all these duty-free shops around the world, and basically there's like 7 different notes that you can taste when you drink Hennessy, and they go through each one of them, and you taste this while you're watching this VR experience, and each sort of section of it kind of speaks to it, but it was in Riffin style, so it's absolutely batshit nuts, with a lot of explosions and colors and nudity and just a lot of, it's fun, it's really cinematic. And so I really liked that approach where, it, you know, really people had to dive into this and experience this craziness, but also at the same time it perfectly melded the importance for that brand, which are those notes of flavor as you enjoy a Hennessy. And so it was a really nice balance. I would say that's a really integral way of doing retail and doing it right.
Hey, I work in digital video and deal with brands a lot, and I've seen kind of, you know, the terrible, boring immersion that we've all kind of discussed earlier, but I'm wondering if there's kind of a thread of what you see in great, impactful, immersive marketing.
I mean, I'd be happy to share. No?
Really? No, go for it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think that this probably speaks to VR in general, and it's a little bit of what you were getting to earlier. But what we've found to be really successful are the pieces that really demand VR as the medium, right? So that are spatially interesting, that have a scale and scope that you otherwise wouldn't be able to experience or appreciate, you know, within a frame or in a headline. I think if there's any through line, it's that. And then I think past that, it's just, you know, the wild west of creativity and freedom, and how well can you direct and or how well can you empower your audience to really understand that they can direct their own experience.
I just say that I had the luck of working with a company called Weaver, who has a really awesome platform, and their quote is "Make brave VR," and I think that's the approach you should take. Just go out there and have a narrative, have a point of view, and like you would in any story. I mean, let's be honest. We won't beat you over the head with that concept, but it's simple. Like, you know, be strong with it and go. You know, otherwise you're gonna have a 360 rig in a room, and people are gonna be sitting around, and it's gonna be great. What was the purpose of that? Right. No one wins with that.
Yeah. Keep them short and sweet, I think, for experiences like that.
And just really thinking about, like, what need are you filling for their client? You know, like, how is this going to fix a problem in their life? I have to go with the orange, yellow here. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Elias, and my question, twofold. One, so it seems like with VR, one of the, since each time you watch it, it can be something different. So it seems like the reviewing, or however you want to call it, you know, it seems like that is an added benefit of it. So, you know, the rewatch value, I guess. So have you all, I guess, heard, or have, in your experience, has that been something that you've been able to push as far as like a way for people to understand, you know, that it's not only are they watching it, but, you know, if they watch it again, they could get a different experience from that. And then kind of the second part of that is, are you able to explain to kind of the people that you're talking with that the future ability of VR, having a 360-degree environment versus the single frame, will allow for that much more marketing? So now you have an entire world to do brand placement, and with the new heat mapping and all that, we can see, you know, start charging by like where people are actually going to look. So do you see that as kind of the future as far as immersive marketing, you know, pushing that rewatch value as well as like the expanded environment for branding within the frame?
Yeah, I mean, it's about keeping that scene full, so you know you can watch it the next time. Like, oh, I didn't notice that one thing. And sometimes I watch a VR experience, and it's just like you don't really understand why it's in VR sometimes. But you know, being able to go back and really leveraging audio, and audio, as Sam was mentioning, it's such an underappreciated part of VR. I mean, it's so critical. It's just as important as the visual, but we tend to be a little bit more obsessed with that. But yeah, just making it so you can watch it over and over again and discover.
A really popular word that we have in VR is called Easter eggs. And that's hiding things in the frame for people to find. Generally, they're going to find it in the second, third viewing. And then if there's a social way to engage people into motivating them to find those Easter eggs and then share those Easter eggs or brag about the Easter eggs, then you really know how engaged they are.
In a really on-the-nose way, we did a VR music video. NPR has their Tiny Desk series, where they have these live performances in their offices, and we shot one in VR with Wilco, and the room was like packed full, and you would think that's like kind of boring because it's that notion you're just standing in a room watching something. Well, we actually did like hide Easter eggs. It was released around Easter, and we actually did hide Easter eggs. And so from an audience perspective, it was like so engaging and fun and interesting, and you got to be so close to it. Yeah, where's Waldo with Wilco?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because we call it stickiness. Can you have somebody coming back for more and more? And just because they're in that space, as long as you use it correctly, you can tell 4 to 8 to 12 different stories, and there's nuanced moments. In Run the Jewels, at one point, we have the guy sneak out from behind, or we have a missile come down, and you'll see a group of people watching it, and then they'll go like, "You see the missile?" And someone's like, "No." So they have to go back in and watch it again, and those kind of things are fun when used in the right time. And as for your advertising question, I mean, is there any way that's not going to happen? We have more walls with which to put our posters of brands. It can be more engaging, and you can make those Easter eggs actually interactive and step into a new world or explore a new environment or build something or destroy something depending on what the gameplay is that's involved. But that's going to be essential, absolutely.
Okay, great, right here.
I'd love to get perspective on the live stream impact on 360 for brands and story and where your head's going with those potentials, with Facebook 360 Live and those kind of things.
Oh, me.
Yeah, why not? Your turn to go first.
Sure. For us, I think live streaming is really fascinating because we're so deeply rooted in news and journalism. And so again, I would argue that it's the brand's affiliation with that moment in time, right? And those events. So we're covering the Olympics right now in 360. If there was a capability, if we were doing that live streaming, who is the brand to associate with the first time that you're live streaming the Olympics in 360, right? I think that's, again, that sort of association with discovery.
Well, I'd say that for those who understand the music world and understand the rights challenges that come with music, a live streaming is actually much cheaper to do than once it's recorded and then it's played just once after that, it exponentially goes up in cost. So you can include, Wilco, we'll just keep it simple, at any of your events and do that live, and it adds a new element. And as audio playback improves, that becomes even more fun. And brands and music go together so well on such a variety of ways, or movements. Bringing a band together in order to help support a cause that's of worth.
Okay. We're getting the red light flashing at us, which means we're out of time. Chris, did you have any last words? Were you?
Nope, none of that type of.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for coming. Some of us will be outside if you have any questions.